Alright, so I have my skincare on, I prepped everything, and I'm about to just start with brows first because I like starting with my eyebrows first and then do some base makeup. So, today, for primer, we're going to use the Poreless Putty Primer and the e.l.f. Grip, whatever, power grip thing. And to start off, I started realizing I had feelings for girls, I want to say when I was like 14 or 13 or 14, because at that time I had a best friend who we would like make out all the time in middle school and like just hang out a lot. We were also on the same cheer team, so if you guys want to hear the full story on that, let me know in the comments below. But back to what I was saying is we were on the same cheer team and we would hang out and kiss and everything, but I didn't think anything of it. I thought that that was like fine. Like I didn't think it was odd to do that. Like I just thought, okay, like that's whatever. Like I didn't think anything of it. And mind you, I had at this point had other experiences with girls where we would kiss and make out and we're friends, or like we're playing house and like different things like that. So this wasn't like a super foreign concept to me, so I just thought it was normal. Turns out it wasn't. But after that point, I was about 16 when I started just seeing more queerness, like being able to recognize it a little bit more. And from there, I started to just come more to terms with the idea that people could be queer. Oh my god. Of course, when I need something, I can't find it. This is so annoying. Okay, back to the story. So around this time, that's when I started to recognize that, queerness was a thing and it's not something negative, because I grew up very religious, very Christian. Everyone and my family was super involved in the church. I'm actually a PK, if you know, you know. But yeah, so I just never really experienced much queerness until around like 16 or so. And when I started to, see more queer people and just recognize it, I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I had nothing negative about it. But then it wasn't until I was 17 that I started, watching more queer content creators on YouTube, like Amber's Closet, Jade Fox, Ari Fitz, who's Arrows now, but like just a lot of queer people of color that like had stories that resembled mine, or like things that I could relate to. I also watched Ariel Scarcella. Like there's a bunch of queer YouTubers that I started to see, but the ones that made the most impact were the people of color, because for me it wasn't something I normally saw. If I did see a queer person, they were, white. So it wasn't like we had that much in common. Um, Started watching those videos, started to, realize some things that I had gone through, or like situations that I was in that I was like, that was very gay, and clearly that should have been my sign. But I took about a year to really come to terms with all these like feelings, and like when I tell you, because again, I was so religious, like most of that year, like a good part of it was trying to pray away that gayness, that queerness, and obviously that did not work. But yeah, so that's when I first started to know, and I believe it was New Year's of 2014 or 2015 where I sat in front of a mirror and I said, I'm gay. Out loud for the first time, and it really just was like a crazy moment for me, especially because I was literally getting ready to go to Sunday service that same night. So it was just a wild thing for me to kind of sit with and say out loud to myself finally. And once I said it out loud, I knew I couldn't take it back. So after coming out to myself first, I think I didn't start telling any of my friends until I want to say like a couple months later, because I was still very like internally homophobic and like dealing with all those feelings and different things like that. So I didn't come out to my friends or like people I went to school with until like almost 18. And I believe I was a senior in high school when this all was going down. So definitely took some time for me at least. Yeah, so after coming out to my friends, I want to say I got really positive reactions for almost all of my friends actually, especially like the ones I was on sports teams with. They were like, but when I came, the big part I'm missing is when I came out to them, I came out as bi first, because I just couldn't bring myself to tell other people that I'm gay. So I was like, I'll just say I'm bi and then see how people react. And that was a time, that phase of my life probably lasted less than a year, because after coming out to my friends, finishing my senior year, guess what I did? Packed my shit and I moved to New York after breaking up with someone. I was in a little relationship for like 6 months, and when I tell you, as soon as I got to New York, that's when things started to get crazy. So now we fast forward to me living in New York City. I'm 18. I'm fresh out of my parents' reach. I am finally single. And I'm out for the most part. Like, but at this point, I hadn't really had any like big experiences or like super meaningful experiences since coming out to my friends and like accepting that for myself. So I want to say it was within the first month and a half of moving to New York that I went to a bar called Cubbyhole. If you are from New York, you know what I'm talking about. Um, and I remember I met these two women. They were just there dancing, having a good time. And one of the girls was just like giving me the vibes. And again, mind you, I was a young 18-year-old. Like, I hadn't really been out to like clubs and stuff because growing up I was always like in the house or at work. Like I never really went out that much. So this is like my first experience going out, going to a gay club, everything. And when I tell you, this girl was definitely a big part in me being able to accept more of my queerness because that night she definitely helped me realize a few things. And mind you, it's not like I knew how old she was. Like I don't think I ever asked. And I was just in the moment vibing, and then I realized like after that situation, the next day, I came to a realization like, no, you're not bi. You like women. And it wasn't like we slept together or anything, but just I learned a lot about myself and like interacting with women and like how that made me feel and X, Y, and Z. So yeah, definitely shout out to you, girl, if you're watching this. But yeah, she basically helped me realize a lot about myself. And then I want to say within the next 3 months after moving to New York, I was out at a gay club pretty much every weekend, if not once a week. Not even gonna hold you. Because, like I said, it's my first time in the city, and it's my first time being able to be openly out and just proud and just queer as fuck. And if you don't know this about New York is gay. I don't care who you are, where you are in New York. You just know New York is a little gay. Everyone's just a little bit gay in New York, to me at least. So that's how I felt about it. And this caused me to really just become more comfortable with who I was and like expressing those parts of myself. But the thing that really set it apart for me, found it. And now, well, pause. We're gonna use the e.l.f. Halo Glow. I am in the shade medium. Yeah, I'm in the shade medium. So, just so you know. But yeah, so I came out and was walling in New York, and that just led to a lot of experiences where I started to become more comfortable with the idea of being queer and like what that looked like for me at least, and like how that could affect me. Now, I will say that this it was like fun because again, I'm not at home, like I don't have to deal with my parents and like everything. So I didn't come out to my parents at this time, just like my friends and people who knew me. So it was a little bit easier for me to like navigate it that way versus just like boom, I'm out. At least that's what I thought at the time. So that's what I did. And it helped me realize that like coming out is a slow process for some people, and that is 100% okay. And you don't have to rush or feel the need to rush anything because you will have your time. You will have the time to have the experiences and like learn the necessary things about yourself. Like you will have the time for sure. So that's what I did. I kind of took my time, but I was still very like unsure when it came to like myself. Like I could put on a front when I'm like around people, like I'm super confident in my queerness, but like when it was just me, myself, and I was questioning everything from what to wear to how to talk to women, just everything that came with that. Okay, so where was I? Right. So after coming out and being in New York for, I believe, the first year, at this point I am comfortable with myself and being out, but I had to go back home at some point, you know? Before we get into the eyeshadow, I'm using this Maxi Reloaded palette from Revolution. It looks like this. It's a little dusty, but it's fine. So yeah, I went home, and I will say from the moment I got home, it was like I was back in the closet again. And I don't know if anyone can relate to this feeling or like understand what I'm saying, but I just felt like I was back in the closet. Like all that confidence that I had spent time building and like spent time really trying to cultivate for myself truly went out of the window because I felt like I had to hide who I was as a person. And that is just sad but true that like a lot of people feel that way. And for me, especially, it was like looking at my old life from a weird lens. Because now I know I'm out. I know I like girls. So everything that I would normally do before, like go to church, see, my parents and like be around my family, like everything felt strange. It felt like I was being an imposter. It felt forced. It felt fake. Like it literally felt like I was living a double life because I was. Um and I just, if you know me, you know I like am the worst. I cannot lie. I can't hide things. Like the whole concept of it makes me sick. So I was really like super hard on myself during this time, and it caused me to become like super depressed in the fact that like the people that I valued the most didn't really know me. They couldn't like fully understand any of the things, and it's also like I can't tell them like, oh, what have you been up to in New York? And it's like, I've been eating pussy. Like, can't just say that. So um with all that happening, I just felt like I had to, you know hide and pretend to be like how I was before I left. And that went on for about a year or two. And right now, I'm using a brown, just like a neutral brown shade from the palette to kind of give my eye a little definition. And then I'm going to take like a softer brown color to blend it out. But yeah, so I just didn't realize like it would be that hard. Like hiding who you are once you know is one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do, at least for me, because it just felt like I was not being myself. It felt suffocating, and it just was not a good time. But I survived, I was able to survive that, and then go back to college the next year and do it again for another year. So when I left my first college in New York, I came back home. I came back home for a year and just didn't go to school. Like there was a year gap for me with college and I just didn't go to school, but it gave me the opportunity to really explore my queer life back at home as much as possible. Like, you know, you gotta keep things low key and you can't really be crazy. So I started to get a lot of friends at this time. I'll say that. And that was cool for a little bit. Some of these people I am still friends with to this day, so shout out to y'all. They really helped me have like a sense of myself when I was here. It made it a little bit easier to live here, basically. And I obviously was living with my parents, so that was like a hard thing to kind of get over, but it definitely helped to have these friends and to just have these connections. And I also started going to, you know, queer events. Like, we have a coffee shop here that is like heavily queer. Um, and that I was spent a lot of time there and like going to groups and just different things to do. I spent a lot of time there doing different things. And in that time, I started making, you know, other queer friends of all ages. So I got to see, like, what queer could look like at different stages of life and just different things like that, which was really helpful, I think. It really helped me further solidify that, like, this is who I am, this is my life, and I love being able to openly celebrate that, at least in the spaces that I had. Um, Now, from what I will tell you about just living in a homophobic household is that even when you try to keep things low key, it's very hard because you start to just lean more into your queerness, even by accident. I feel like I started to lean more into my queerness and just started to speak up about things that like I would speak up about, but in a more passionate way. Now I'm speaking up about these things and I'm mentioning these things and like having the discussions and debates around them. So I feel like it definitely, my parents definitely started to realize like what's what is going on. But I always tried to frame it in a way that was like, oh, women empowerment, you know, for the girls or whatever. But it was because I was gay. And whenever my parents would say something a little bit homophobic or like, not a little bit, when they would say things that were blatantly homophobic, I'd be like, why do you care? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would really start to stand up for a lot of these things. So I definitely think they sensed a change in me that way. But again, my parents still do not know about me being queer, about anything regarding like my sexuality. They still think I'm straight. They just, all they know at this point is that I had a boyfriend and now I don't. And honestly, that was okay with me. And anytime someone would ask, like, hey, like, why don't you have a boyfriend? Or you don't want to date? And I'm like, no, I'm focused on school, I'm focused on work, blah, blah, blah. And that worked for me for a while. Like, people started to mind their own business, for at least a little bit. And honestly, I'm thankful for that. But at the time, this is when I started to, like I said, I had friends. So at the time, I started to be like, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with this person or whatever. And if you ever had religious parents growing up, or maybe it's just my parents, you had to introduce your friends to your parents. But because I'm like, what, 20 years old at this point, I just was like, oh, well, I'm old enough, blah, blah. And luckily, they gave in to that. Some people they did meet and we gave off a very friendly vibe because, like, if you know the assignment, if you're in the closet. But a lot of the time, I had to kind of just pretend that, like, this is my bestie, this is my girl, my friend, whatever. And that worked. But again, it still felt very like fake and like forced. So I started to try to, do other things. Like go on dates with groups of people so it was less obvious. Or say I was going somewhere when I was going somewhere else. All of these things are just like building up and taking a toll on me, kind of. Because, like I said, I am not the type of person that likes to lie. So, doing this really did take a lot out of me as a person. But it's fine, we're here. We were able to get through. But in doing so, I just started to, like, kind of lose myself in that. So, the only stability I had was knowing that I had a separate life. So I really started to prioritize that. Prioritize the two lives. Even with some of my friends from home that knew that I was gay and like I was out, they were the people that I was going to. I was having a lot of distance between my family. And that can be hard. Especially when you used to be close and now you're not, and you can't give them a real reason why. So that happened, and I want to say around 20, my late 20 to 21st, like that year that I turned 21, my life literally took a freaking 360, like a 180, not even a 360, but a 180 for sure, because things just happened in my life outside of my queerness that really just like set me off on a pretty like destructive path, I guess. So I just started to not give a fuck. Like, I started to be, a little bit more sloppy with the fact that I'm hanging out with these people and like what we're doing. Like, I just started to not care because at this point I didn't feel the need to hide it really that well from my parents anymore. And in doing so, this landed me into my parents figuring out that I was gay as fuck. And if you guys want to hear the story about how my parents found out I was gay, let me know in the comments, because when I tell you that is a crazy juicy story, let me just tell you, threesomes were involved. craziness was involved. So, yeah. If you want to hear that story, let me know in the comments. But back to the story at hand. We I think I had just come back from my first, like, international trip with my friends. And like I said, I was wallet in these streets when I was not with my parents. So I was having quite the time, if you can imagine. And oh, my bad. I am using the e.l.f. Halo Glow Beauty Wand Contour Stick. Sorry, I didn't tell you guys. And for all the concealers, I'm using e.l.f. Camo Concealer, but I will try to have everything linked in the description box. But yeah, so I basically was walling. Like, let me zoom in for you guys so I can show you guys how I do my nose contour. Okay, so I basically wanted to try this trick where you do this. And it's supposed to, like, help you get the most snatched, like, nose, I guess. And then obviously do a little bit on the tip. Okay. Hopefully this turns out good, but so far this is where we're at. But, yeah, so let's zoom back out. Alright. So yeah, this is basically where I'm at with my family right now, is we're not really on the best speaking terms, and I just don't give a fuck. I'm just being brash as fuck, to be honest. Like, I'm doing whatever I basically want behind closed doors and not really making sure that they're closed all the way, if I could say that. And once my parents found out that I was gay, it definitely led to a lot of problems. Like I said, I do have really religious parents, and part of that is that they were not super accepting of my queerness in my case, and that resulted in me being kicked out of my house. So I low key was kind of homeless for a couple months, but it's okay because at that time as well, because I knew I was walling in the streets and whatnot, I had decided to just go to my local community college to, like, just finish up my degree and get my courses and everything else like that. So I had already decided that, and this just further helped me with what to do and, like, whether to live in the dorm or not. So once I realized I was kicked out, I said, well, I'm gonna just, live in the dorms and it'll be fine. And I, unfortunately, at this time also went no contact with my parents. Not by a choice that I made, but, it happens and people need their time to process. So we were no contact at this time. And because of that, I kind of just leaned on my friends and the people who accepted me for who I was as a person. So that really helped a lot when it came to, like, having no immediate family that was there. Having those friends and those people be there to support you really, like, helps, truly. And if you are someone who is thinking about coming out and you're scared that something similar might happen to you where you might get kicked out or whatever. Obviously, do what is safest for you, but I will say that you find out who your community is in times of need for sure, and you'll definitely learn who is going to be there for you in tough times if you choose to come out. Hopefully, it won't end up in you getting kicked out, but if it does, you definitely have a community to fall back on. We are here. I'm here. If anyone ever wants to, send me messages about whatever they have went through in their own personal life, I would love to connect with you guys and we can talk more. But yeah, so that's kind of what I was going through at the time. And mind you, I'm 21 years old, back in college, so I am working, and I have always been the type of person who worked for what they had. Ever since I was 12, I have had a job, so this concept of being quote unquote on my own was not like super crazy new for me, like to get what I needed to get done. So, yeah, I just was like, okay, well, got a job. Then from that job, I was able to support myself. Like, I had a dorm to live in. I went grocery shop. Like, all the things that I needed to do for myself, I made sure happened for me. And at a certain point, as sad as it is to say, like, I kind of, like, not forgot, but like I kind of became more at peace with the fact that my family wasn't talking to me. Like it wasn't like so hurtful anymore. It was just something that was like part of my life, and I learned to be content with what it was. And I will say that by being kicked out, I definitely learned a lot about my queerness and like how far I personally was willing to go to stand on what I believed in and to stand up for myself. I learned that no matter what I try and do, this is who I am as a person. It's not going to change just because it would be easier or it would make people more comfortable for me to not be gay. Because trust me, baby girl, I am a black woman who's also queer in America. I don't need any more chips stacked against me. Truly, I don't. So this definitely, someone's calling me. This definitely helped me realize that I am stronger than I thought, and it gave me the confidence to continue to live unapologetically. And honestly, I'm really grateful for the opportunity because I don't know, truly, if my parents would have never found out I was gay, I don't know if I would have ever come out to them. I don't know if that would have ever been a conversation that I was ready to have. So in that way, I am very thankful for like all of that. And as far as my personal life went, I started to, go on dates more. I started to become more comfortable with the idea of being queer out loud and like what that meant for me, especially. So, yeah, I started going on dates. I started talking to people more. And like I said previously, I was already like into going to events and like supporting my local queer community and like really diving in that way. So this just set me a little bit more up for getting more involved in the community, I guess. And just putting myself out there more as far as the queer community. And I think that it was really helpful for me. Like, I had to go through that time period of like uncertainty with my family to be able to get to the point where I could be confident and comfortable without them. Okay, taking a break for the story. Look at that. What? I am trying to recreate a makeup look, by the way, that I did on myself like a week ago. So we're really trying to nail it. I might show you guys a side by side picture to see if I did it. You can let me know. But yeah, being queer is hard. A lot of questions that you have, especially if you don't grow up around queerness or like queer people that maybe look like you and you feel you can connect to. So it is definitely something that I had to go through to learn about myself. And I feel like it helped me become a stronger person for sure. But okay, back. And also, I feel like some of the main things that I was going through at this time wasn't so much how do I be queer. It was really finding out what that looked like for me amidst all this stuff that was going on. Like, amidst the friends, amidst the fucking, just people being around you, amidst the parents, amidst your own personal feelings. Like, I had to figure out what being queer looked like for me realistically and like how I could show that through my life. Oh, fuck. Don't you guys hate when your eyelash curler thing isn't like all the way in there? But yeah, so that's what I got so far. And I feel like in the late in years, I have been more just I get more gay as the years go on, and I truly love that for me because I am no longer afraid of being queer. I am no longer afraid of what people will think of me because I'm queer, or like I'm no longer afraid of like other people's judgment of me being gay. Like, I just don't care anymore. And I'm so happy and thankful that I could get to the point where I don't care. Just to let you guys know, for the translucent powder that I'm using the OG throwback airspun powder that I got from like a Rite Aid or Walgreens. And I'm just going in with a really light layer of powder and like pressing it in a lot so that it kind of blends well. Except for on my nose. On my nose, I'm doing a little bit more only because when we get ready to highlight, this will just help bring everything together. I'm just going over like all the edges of like where my concealer was, and like even underneath my eyes where my concealer was. It kind of just helps tidy everything up. And like, I like to set my eyebrows with translucent powder anyway, so this is the time where I would go and like do that. Okay. So now that we have set our face and I've kind of told you guys all about my craziness, let's get into this smoking this under eye, and we'll talk about like where I am now and my. Sorry, I have really bad allergies. We'll talk about where I am now in my queer journey, I guess. So I'm just taking a dark brown from that Revolution palette and putting it underneath my eye. And I feel like now, as a 27-year-old person who's been out for almost 10 years, I could not be happier for everything, even the negative stuff. Like, I could not be more happy to have experienced my life the way I experienced it, because it definitely taught me a lot about myself. And even to this day, I don't have questions of like my queerness, but I always have questions of like what would it have been like if I could have came out, earlier, if I was able to come out to my parents earlier, or whatever the case may be. There's always that what if question, because you realize that your life is so much better when you live authentically, that like it's crazy to think that what if I could have been living in this truth this whole time. So yeah, it's definitely a process. And like I said, to anyone that is not currently out or thinking of coming out this Pride season, weigh your options, do what's safe for you, but also realize that this is your journey, this is your life. And as much as someone could, say like we'll support you, whatever, you have to be able to make that decision and be comfortable with it. So I definitely think take your time and do what's right for you, for sure. Um, but other than that, I think that's kind of all the like that's all I really have for my queer journey. It's not as crazy as I thought it was gonna be once I started talking. I thought it was gonna be like an hour's worth of stuff, but it's really like short and sweet, honestly, without getting into too crazy of a detail. I just went to New York and basically was like, okay, bitch, you definitely gay. No, I'm just kidding, but um, yeah, I just took my time in embracing the fact that I was queer and what that looked like for me, and I think that that definitely helped. It definitely helped me realize that, like, and also going to gay events will help you realize that, like, you are not the only gay person in your area. You are not, like, there's others like you, and you don't feel so isolated. So I guess my biggest advice for those who are just coming out, or those who have been out, just like get into your community, work on making your life not centered around your queerness, but fully embracing it. Not just you don't want to talk about it at work. Like, yes, obviously, no one at work needs to know your sexuality, but like, you don't have to hide. Getting rid of the feeling of being hidden from the world goes away with time. You become more confident. And even if you're not doing anything that's quote unquote gay, you're just exuding that confidence. You're giving that energy off, and people will be able to see that, and whether they love you or hate it for you, at least you're living your authentic self, and that's all you can really do. Honestly, it's crazy that it's 2024 and people still have to come out, but that's another topic. But yeah, so we smoked it out, got a little smoky, and then we're gonna line the inner corners. I can't talk while I'm doing this, so hold on, guys. Okay, inner corners are done.